I'll be talking about the Construction Innovation Hub, but it is part of a wider programme which I will also be talking about. So you might be confused in the early stages of the talk because it doesn't seem to be focusing on the Construction Innovation Hub. So yes, I'm responsible for the government-sponsored programme for transforming construction, part of the industrial strategy. We know that from a societal point of view, from a government point of view, and absolutely from an industry point of view, that there's an enormous amount to be done in terms of needing to improve the way construction is carried out. So I won't read through all these. I think people are familiar with the challenges that we face in terms of the built environment and the construction industry. It is a massive industry, employing nearly 10% of the UK workforce, and we've got this looming skills crisis that a lot of people have referred to already. And again, with regards to this, the image that I want everybody to be aware of, and I do bang on about this a certain amount, is there is just so much waste in the system at the moment, so much process waste in construction. You see that on any construction site. You do an analysis of it, you just realise that only a minority of the activities that are happening on construction sites are actually directly adding value to the end customer. So that's part of the problem, but it's also where to look for the solutions. And my experience, my rule of thumb is, if you industrialise the processes, if you go off-site predominantly with your activities, instantly, without doing anything that clever, you can double productivity. Worth being aware, and again, this is another of my sort of hobby horses these days. The UK construction industry is really good in global terms. People who've worked in UK construction and seen things happening will be very aware of what we don't get right, very aware of frustrations, what the needs and the opportunities are to improve things. But actually, on a global scale, we're really good. So this graph shows productivity, output per man hour in construction for all sorts of different countries. You see the UK sitting pretty much at the top, the top big country. Belgium, interestingly enough, outperforms a little bit. The x-axis is about rate of change. Obviously, part of what I want to do is to get us higher up the y-axis and also get us on the graph whereby we're really accelerating and the speed of change is greater. And I've seen construction sites in many countries in the world, and it's really heartening in a way to realise just how good we are comparatively to other countries. Our standards of organisation, our safety standards, our quality standards and so forth are already very good in the global context. Oh, that's interesting. I've lost the middle picture there, but it doesn't matter. The point here with regards to this slide is that the whole world, as it were, the whole of industry is looking at Industry 4.0, the fourth phase of the Industrial Revolution. So there's an enormous amount of activity and development going on across industry that we can learn from and benefit from. If you think of the previous iterations, phases of the Industrial Revolution, so mass production and automation, they weren't that great for an industry that makes big, heavy, bespoke things. Industry 4.0, and the features of it are down this side: interoperability, information transparency, technical assistance of machines and people, and decentralized decisions. All these map across well to the needs and the opportunities for the construction industry. So interoperability, lots of Internet of Things solutions in the construction industry, and indeed the benefits of being able to slot together the different parts of the built environment, seeing the built environment as a kit of parts, is so relevant to what we do. Information transparency, well, that's digital modelling. That's what we're here today. Experts, this room is full of experts in this subject. Again, UK is relatively speaking a world leader in digital modelling in terms of construction, partly through the support I think that BIM has had through the BIM Level 2 mandate and so forth. Neil's talked about construction robotics, cobots and so forth. Absolutely right, prices are coming down for the hardware, very significant, and that was what Neil referred to particularly. But I think even more than that, the price and the convenience of programming the robots is improving so much at the moment. And if you go into a car factory, you see loads and loads of robot arms that are all sort of caged off and protected from people. In the construction industry, we kind of have to work closely with automation. And that's where the technology's going, that's where the opportunities are. So again, real support for the kind of stuff that we need to do. And decentralized decisions, so we're talking about distributed AI there. And quite clearly, the more you can automate construction sites, the more that all the diggers and the earth movers and so forth can be automated, driverless and programmable, the better for us. And that's a massive trend that we can capitalize on. I've got a lot of confidence in the application of all these technologies because as Innovation Director at Skanska, I got kind of hands-on experience of dealing with a lot of these things. So applying Internet of Things solutions to the built environment, applying condition-based asset management solutions, so collecting data about assets, being able to respond at just the right time to structural movement or deterioration in plant. If you've got boilers and air conditioners and so forth, sending data back that tell you exactly when you've got to go in and intervene, change the bearings or the filters or what have you. Off-site manufacturing, I've seen the benefits firsthand of that. I've got a couple more slides on that. And data analytics and visualization. One of the projects I was doing when I was at Skanska was with James Daniel, this project called Visualize, and really finding enormous benefits from the insights you can get from collecting and analysing data. So we really have got a fantastic portfolio of opportunities that we can build upon. In terms of the fundamentals, off-site manufacturing is one of those fundamentals, just moving the value-adding activities as much as possible into an organised, lean, principled factory environment. Some cases where you've got really consistent demand, then that will merit investing in fixed factories that really optimize things in the most automated way. So that's part of the equation. I think that another approach that needs to be propagated through the construction industry is flying factories, temporary flexible factories that address the needs of a project or a cluster of projects. And what's important here is that you're not tying yourself in. As an organisation investing in this sort of stuff, and essentially when I say invest, it's really about renting space or just setting up a factory temporarily. You're not tying yourself into significant overheads. So you're not gambling on absolutely consistent supply over years to come. You're saying, okay, I know what I've got to do for this project, and I can rent the space and provide the factory space accordingly for that. So at Skanska, we did it with regards to these utility cupboards, they were called, for high-end apartments in Battersea, next to the Battersea Power Station development. The reason I've got such specific figures here is we made about 600 of these things in the flying factory, and we made about 400 of them on site because of site constraints. So it was a fantastic case study of comparing off-site manufacture to on-site, and that's why I know just how much better it was. But the same principles are applicable to all kinds of building types. So, I don't want to give the impression with the last slide, that it's just about things with walls and roofs. Linear infrastructure, we did the same approach, flying factory with the A14 project. We bought, in this case, tents where we set up a precast facility. Involved redesign of a lot of the bridges and overpasses to be made in a precast sort of factory-based environment, and again, fantastic benefits from that. So, I think that's another technique as part of the portfolio of techniques that's going to be really important in transforming construction. We've already had reference to these fundamental targets, so I don't need to go into these. I'm sure everyone's familiar with these. The Construction Leadership Council in 2013, working with the government, came up with these targets for 2025. There's been some progress towards this so far. Benchmarking, it has to be said, has been a little bit ropey, so it's hard to know exactly where we are. And the mission now is to sort of change the trajectory of the graph to accelerate towards these targets, to move faster towards these targets. And the mainstay of the strategy, the sector deal for construction, is these three things. Digital techniques, again, the primary focus of what we're here for today. So modelling the finished products more thoroughly, modelling the processes by which we create and build the built environment. The manufacturing techniques, really learning whatever we can from other industries and bringing a manufacturing approach to construction. So offsite obviously is part of that. And then the performance. So really changing the mindset from this, dare I say, obsession with capital expenditure, with the capital cost of the asset, and much more confidently thinking about the point of what we're creating. The user benefits, the user experience of the assets, the running costs of these assets. And I see that as running right the way through to how do you design and build an office that will create more productive workers? How do you design and build a hospital that will get patients to recover more quickly? Schools to have better learning outcomes and that sort of thing. In terms of delivering these changes, procuring differently is absolutely part of that equation. We heard a little bit about it in terms of intelligent clients, intelligent procurement earlier on, and the demands from customers are such a vital driver for the industry. We have to come up with the innovation. We have to identify, de-risk, develop the solutions so that they're easy to apply, practical to apply for organisations within the industry. And we have to address the skills of the industry. And I'm talking about the skills both of organisations, so improving the digital capability of organisations, and also attracting the right people into the construction industry. I'm a great evangelist these days for just what an exciting phase the construction industry is going to go through in the next few years. I think it's true to say, and I think the experience of recruitment is the construction industry hasn't been seen as the most exciting area in the last couple of decades for people to go into. But hell, this is, it's the last great unreformed industry. There's so many exciting jobs to be had in this industry. There's all this engagement in terms of caring about the planet and carbon emissions and climate change with the Extinction Rebellion stuff. Really, that is really engaging in capturing the passion of young people today. And going into the construction industry is where you can really make a practical difference to these things. So I think we have a huge opportunity around bringing new skills and new talent into the industry. I see the transformation as construction as very much about integration. At the moment, we know that we've got a very fragmented industry. We're fragmented in terms of the layers of the supply chain. We're fragmented in terms of the lack of sharing of information. And we're fragmented in terms of
No, not nearly enough long-term relationships. So what we call a longitudinal integration in the industry. You know, people are always, organizations are buying the packages for a particular project and then going back and buying packages for the next project and so forth. We really need to integrate much better. We need vertical integration in terms of standard products and processes for the industry, whether it's by firms that really integrate across the value chain, and Langer Rourke would be an example of that, or doing that virtually through an enterprise approach to construction projects. Project 13, which many people will have probably heard of, is a model for an enterprise approach to construction projects. So standard products and processes, vertically integrated, taking the active building, energy positive technologies into the building process in a vertically integrated way. And then horizontal integration, collecting and sharing much more information about our activities. And there's a lot of work going on with regards to that, particularly through the Construction Leadership Council and the Procuring for Value activities. If you've got the right information, then you can mobilize machine learning, artificial intelligence, to analyze that data to steer decision making for the industry. And I have been determined to foster a much more lively ecosystem around artificial intelligence for the construction industry. And I'm seeing really positive signs of activities around that, you know, a rise of focus on artificial intelligence, and it comes up in a later slide. In terms of government support, so the government announced a year and a half ago, was it, the industrial strategy. It's got these 4 grand challenges: clean growth, healthy ageing, future of mobility, and AI and the data economy. So the government's been responding to pitches from different sectors of industry in terms of providing support for those sectors. So there have been 21 awards, I believe, to date in terms of lumps of money to support sectors within industry. So transforming construction is one of those. We've been successful with an award of, I'll skip to that side, 170 million of government money to support transforming construction. In the process of pitching for this sector deal, the industry pledged 250 million of match funding, which we now need to make sure that we collect. Actually, that looks like a big figure, but it's not nearly as ambitious as you might think it is, because we know that collectively the construction industry is already investing, so that's over 4 years, we need to show that. The construction industry is already proving that it is investing about 650 million a year in innovation and R&D. That's through the R&D tax credits system. A significant, probably the vast majority of that figure is aligned with transforming construction. What we need to do is to make sure that the R&D and innovation investments of the industry are better coordinated, and we certainly hope that they will increase even from this. You know, on the one hand, 650 million a year is a big figure. On the other hand, as a proportion of turnover, it's a relatively small figure. It's about 0.7% of construction activity. So there is actually a lot of opportunity to do more with that. We've got 4 years to implement this transforming construction program, and we're not going to change the whole industry in 4 years. But what we need to do, what we're determined to do, is render the existing approaches to construction obsolete, to show that there's a better way of doing things, and to set up the sort of ripple of change, the wave of change in a sustainable way. We're spending 72 million, and I will get to what I was supposed to talk about in a moment. 72 million on the Construction Innovation Hub. 36 million on the active building centre, buildings as power stations, energy positive technology, and 59 million on research projects. I'll just go back one. So a key part of the formula for making this successful is really mobilising the buying power of government. So while on the one hand we want all clients as much as possible to be driving forward these changes to construction, the digital, the manufacturing, the whole life performance, where we've got really close relationships is with the 5 government departments down here, defence, justice, education, health and transport, that are spending tens of billions a year on construction. So those departments, coordinated by the Infrastructure and Projects Authority, are really going to be pulling through and making sure that the construction supply chains are delivering this transformation. So, Construction Innovation Hub. This is the 72 million investment, working closely with government, and the leader of it, Keith Waller, actually has come from the Infrastructure and Projects Authority, so he really understands how that client sector, that client group work, and what their needs are. Working closely with government, working closely with industry, and we're ramping up now the capability to really engage in a practical way with a wide range of organisations within the industry in terms of supporting their transformation programmes and their strategy changes. And the output, the activities of the Construction Innovation Hub are focused on these 4 areas. So, product family architecture approach, a kit of parts approach to the built environment. So this is about setting the rules. The walled garden approach is sometimes referred to in terms of the sort of digital environment for apps and so forth. But setting the kit of parts guidelines for the built environment. Making sure that standards and compliance are addressed with regards to those kitted parts and those construction systems. Providing information management framework, as we call it. So essentially the digital parameters for the kitted parts for the built environment. And as has been referred to a bit already today, information security around that. You know, particularly when we're in the context of government assets, making sure that information security issues are addressed. So it's about physical assets, and equally it's about the digital twin of those assets. So that's what the centre of this is. The digital twin concept, very supportive of the whole life performance issue that we've talked about, or I've talked about already. And then in terms of the outputs, the outcomes and outputs of all this, really looking for that balanced scorecard approach. You know, economic benefits, so better jobs, more sustainable jobs, more distributed across the country. Obviously, if you're going more off-site, then you're not so dependent on labour in the area where the building's finally going up. You can site the factories where there's a need for jobs, where there's cheap labour and so forth. Social outcomes in terms of the improved quality of the built environment and addressing things like the terrible issues that showed up with Grenfell, and then the environmental issues, the energy positivity of buildings, the pollution, the waste and so forth associated with the built environment. The Construction Innovation Hub is sort of hosted by 3 existing centres. So Manufacturing Technology Centre, part of the Catapult network. That's where the expertise particularly is in manufacturing processes. The Building Research Establishment, experts in testing and validation and engagement with the industry. And then the Cambridge Centre for Digital Built Britain. So, a very good programme of digital activity there. And then the 4th centre, this building doesn't exist yet, this is a CGI. So we are sponsoring work associated with Swansea University, where they've been developing energy positive technology. So we're talking about collecting energy from the air and the sun, storing that energy, distributing that energy. A building like that, and we've done it with schools and homes and offices already, can actually be made to be energy positive, can generate more energy than it actually uses, and therefore has got surplus energy to put to electric vehicles or back to the grid. Oh, so that's what that's about. Oh, what's happened there? So far we've allocated about 20 million of research funding. And we've got competitions opening in August this year to allocate another 36 million approximately of research funding. So there'll be a big publicity drive starting next month around those calls that'll open in August. And then there'll be a competition open until the end of October. So 36 million will be up for grabs in terms of investment that we can make through companies. A lot of people will be familiar with this Innovate UK type funding. So a lot more information will be coming out about this. In terms of what we've funded so far, the scope was very much based on all the stuff I've been talking about. Lots of successful bids around artificial intelligence, which I was very excited to see. I didn't judge these bids. We have a panel of 5 judges that judges each of the applications, and then there's the scoring and so forth. So lots of activity around AI for the built environment. Lots of activity around Internet of Things solutions, digital solutions, augmented reality, BIM, that sort of thing. And a good proportion of things around industrialized construction solutions. In terms of slightly more academically focused things, actually just about everything here is industry-led. Just Alexa for Sites is a slightly more academically orientated, more of a feasibility study thing. We're continuing to invest in 3D concrete printing, sort of next era of robots, robot clusters is being invested in, and non-prismatic concrete, so concrete shapes that are more efficient in terms of the forces within those members we're investing in. So that's the programme. Hopefully something for everyone, something for government, something for wider society, and a really good boost for organisations within the construction industry to improve profit margins, to improve the quality of life for people working in the construction industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. Is there, thank you for giving us such a brilliant overview of the exciting sort of programme of work that's going on to transform the industry. Anyone would like to ask a quick question before we move on? Yeah, Graham.
Sorry, I hope you can hear me. It was more of an observation, actually. I mean, the work at the Hub I'm familiar with Keith, because I know Keith quite well. But I think the big elephant in the room is the bit on your diagram which says robust and continuous demand.
Yeah.
Which doesn't exist in this industry. The government pipeline, we did the report, published the report in the FT about the pipeline. Only 12% of the projects that are articulated in that pipeline have any credibility whatsoever.
I do think a lot of more work
it's a big issue
needs to be done around that.
The industry cannot invest on wafer-thin margins when there's just this stop-start-go on demand. That has to be resolved for all of the rest.
So have you seen that the government is not succeeding in terms of providing consistency from its side? Because that's where we've got the...
not if it's publishing pipelines that are, frankly, a fairy story.
So that's got to be more robust.
To be
that's we have the links there, and that's useful feedback in terms of what we're experiencing.
I think the ambition is there to do it, but until firms in the industry see a proper, credible pipeline of investment in this country that investors can actually invest in, then, you know, with the best will in the world, a lot of this just, unfortunately, will...
While I absolutely recognise that there has been a problem and there remains a problem today, I think there are solutions to be had to that, because if you zoom out and take a historical perspective, there is actually been relatively consistent demand in the different subsectors within construction. It's just that that's not how it's experienced by construction companies. So I think it's about that collecting and aggregating the information.
If you talk to the firms in the industry right now this year, they're all saying, you know, demand has dropped away, you know, massively. Somebody was saying to me, I think it might have been Richard Saxon, about architectural billings have fallen through the floor. You know, the likes of the big infrastructure contractors they're struggling this year. That's not consistent demand. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's something to raise up the to-do list, I guess. And, you know, government is, in theory, capable of doing more with that. Obviously, we're all aware of the political situation that the nation is in at the moment. Yeah.
Could I ask a question? In terms of the productivity chart that people quote from McKinsey, one of the points that I've heard people say about that is that it doesn't really take into consideration just how much work in construction is about refurbishment, you know, quite labour-intensive refurbishment projects. I just wonder where you see...
I'm glad you asked that, yeah, because it's an important point. The sector deal for construction, this 4-year programme, is very much focused on new build, and the logic for that is that new build should be relatively easier to address. In terms of the great themes that I've mentioned here, it should be easier to apply the manufacturing approaches and such like to new build. So we want to reset the system by focusing on new build, but all of us are aware that there is a massive need to retrofit and improve what exists already, and the expectation is that this will be another phase that will be addressed. And actually, I don't feel quite ready to get stuck into it, but already there are demands to start designing that next phase, which would address retrofit. I think a lot of the techniques that we're developing are quite readily transferable into retrofit, so there's no resistance, and we would encourage that. But you know, I think it will be slower to industrialise or to transform the retrofit sector.
I've been indicated that we have to sort of wrap up this section and move on, but I'm sure Sam will be around to answer questions over coffee if anyone needs to drill down on a few more things. So
thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.